Well, welcome to the Boomer Technician channel. This week, we're at our 10th state, Tennessee, and I'm standing in a scenic overlook because one of the great attractions of Tennessee is their beautiful Smoky Mountains. And we've got this great mountain view behind us because we're in Tennessee for the Ponies in the Smokies event in Sevierville, Tennessee. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute here. But in terms of the automotive influence here in Tennessee, NASCAR's got a big presence in this part of the country. The Bristol Motor Speedway is right up the road. And there's a couple of automotive manufacturing plants. There's a Volkswagen plant in Chattanooga, a GM plant in Spring Hill, and a Nissan plant down south below Nashville. And all three of them are fairly recent construction. I think they were all built in the 80s or the 90s. The Volkswagen plant may have even built in the 2000s, but that's a fairly recent change for Tennessee. They've all of a sudden become a hub of automotive manufacturing. So, an interesting state to come visit. I should note that if you're on the east or the west end of the state, it's a long state to drive across, almost a full day to get from the eastern border all the way to the western border. So, incorporate that into your travel plans. And I'm looking forward to my drive through the Great Smokies to get to the Ponies in the Smoky event in Sevierville. So, let's get on the road. Well, we're here at Smoky Mountain near Knoxville, Tennessee, because it's the overflow parking lot for the Saturday Ponies in the Smokies event. And here we are at the Sevierville Convention Center where the event's taking place. And let's go ahead and go on in and take a look at things. The front of the convention center is quite lovely with this rock wall waterfall. But of course, the real action is on the inside where we've got vendors set around the perimeter of the convention center and all the Mustangs in the world here in the center. And we've got both Ford Mustangs, we've got Roush Mustangs, and of course, Shelbys. And the neat thing about it is the inside of the convention center, we've got an example of every model year all lined up in model year order. So we start with this red 65 here. It's maybe even a 64 and a half. And in that down that row, we've got the 66, 67, 68. Well, you get the point. And of course, looking at this row of early Mustangs, all the cars are really quite pristine. But as we make our way up, particularly through the 70s and early 80s, not all the cars were quite as pristine as the cars we're seeing here, uh, simply because there just aren't as many examples out there. Of course, the owners of these early Mustangs tend to take really good care of them and do full off restorations. Here in this shot, we can see a row of the first generation cars, and here's the Mustang 2s. And then looking down this way, it's all Fox bodies. So lots of great cars here in the convention center. But rather than look at every car here at the show, I thought we'd spend some time comparing the first generation to the second generation, and then the second generation to the third generation, because these cars saw such a significant change from generation to generation. And the question is, which of the generational changes saw the greatest difference from one Mustang to another? So we'll start by comparing a 73 Mustang to a 74 Mustang. The first thing we're going to look at is the engine packages. So in 73, we had a straight six along with three variations of the V8 engine. In 74, of course, we had the four cylinder and the V6. So a significant difference in engine packages between the two vehicles. Next, we'll compare the size of the two vehicles. The last of the first generation was the biggest Mustang ever built, and the second generation car was the smallest Mustang ever built. So quite a bit of difference in length and width, and about the same height though in both cases. Now we'll compare the 78 and the 79, the second and third generation cars. Starting with the engines, the i4 was the same for both cars, although the 79 did offer a turbo version. The V6 was the same for both cars. And in 78, the Mustang 2 did offer a V8, which carried over to 79. And the only real exception to the parallel engine offerings was a mid-year change from the V6 to a straight six. So overall, the engines were very similar between the second generation and the third generation. Comparing the sizes, we'll start out with the first generation and the second generation car, and then when we dissolve out the first generation car and put the third generation car on, you can see that the Fox body really splits a difference in body size. And Ford was working hard to find that sweet spot in terms of Mustang size. And given the success of the Fox body, I think they really nailed it. But it is a difference between the early car and the later car. The last thing we're going to look at is some features on the chassis. You can see the first generation car was unique in having the recirculating ball steering, but it shared an A-arm front suspension and leaf spring rear suspension with the middle year car. And then the later car had both a unique rear coil spring suspension and a McPherson strut front suspension. So it shared some features with the second generation car, but all three of them had some major engineering changes as they made their way through the generational changes. So there's some data you can use to make your decision, but there's a lot of subjectivity involved in this decision. The styling for the Fox body was so different from the first generation and the second generation. The chassis design changed significantly. And for me, I think the Fox body is the greater change between the first gen and the second generation versus the second generation or the third generation. But a lot of that has to do with what the Fox body became and, its transition to a true muscle car in the mid 80s is represented by this first arrival of the Boss motor in 1982. And to wrap up things, we were going to take a look at the outside car show. It wasn't organized by model year, but lots of folks showed up. Ponies and the Smokies is a full week's event with lots of driving events, lots of different competitions and get togethers. But the Friday and Saturday car show are the main focus of the event. So if you want to show up on that Saturday, you'll see most of the cars at the event. And of course, Old Glory. Well, that wraps up this week's video. I really enjoyed my trip to Tennessee. I enjoyed driving through the Smokies, and the Ponies in the Smokies event is a great event. The organizers do a great job, and I'd encourage anybody who wants to see a line of Mustangs from 1964 up to the current model year to show up to the show and just walk the line and check out the changes from year to year. And I encourage you, if you have some thoughts on which is the greater change, 73 to 74 versus 78 to 79, go ahead and speak up in the comment section. We love to hear anything you folks have to say about Mustangs or the process or the car shows. And next week, we've got another car show, planning on getting to South Carolina. So with that, let me always remind you that no matter where you go, there you are.